down in 8th position on the grid. So look for Dick, number 17, in that famous green car of his. And look too, of course, for 05, Peter Brock, who is in 4th position on the grid. Jim Richards was terrific in qualifying yesterday in the wet. The BMW was sensationally fast, and Jim, of course, has got the reputation of being an absolutely ace wet weather driver, which will be of absolutely no use to him at all today, because thank heavens the circuit is as dry as a bone. And here they go, dodging, weaving, ducking, turning, warming up the tyres. And how significant is that, Alan?
Very, Murray. When you're on a standing start, the first corner is critical. If you don't have your tires warm and you turn left into the first corner, you can very easily find yourself going straight ahead. It is the heat, the warmth in the tires that gives them their grip, and without that, they're in a lot of trouble on the opening lap.
So in the top 6 there are 3 Holdens developing from their V8 engines over 400 horsepower. In pole position, the 340 horsepower BMW of Jim Richards. Then there are 2 Nissan Skyline turbos in the top 6 as well. That of number 15, young 21-year-old Glenn Seaton, and George Fury. They develop about 315 horsepower. So the Holden has got the edge in terms of sheer grunt. And that's probably going to pay off in this long 32-lap race. And in particular, watch Peter Brock from 4th position on the grid. Watch Graham Crosby. Crosby in 2nd place on the grid with Brock right behind him. And as you look at the picture, on the right in the front is the black BMW of Jim Richards. On the left, the orange Bob Jane T-Mart's Holden of Crosby. Then behind Crosby, there is the very distinctive car. Behind Crosby is Peter Brock, and behind Jim Richards is Glenn Seaton. Well, they're still edging up into position on the grid. This is the critical time when, as I said in the Formula Ford race, the drivers have to be very slick about when they select first gear so as not to burn out the clutch, holding it out while they're in first gear. Well, the revs are rising now because there's just one car, I think, to come into position at the back of the grid. Right at the back of the grid is Terry Finnegan, who did so well last year, and he had a lot of trouble in practice yesterday, but it looks like it is all ready to go. Ideal weather conditions, bright sunshine, warm track. Glenn Dix, the starter, reaches down to his control unit and he's giving it the visual signal, reaches for the buttons, and it is go! And Jim Richards fairly streaks away through. George Fury comes fighting through. Now we had all sorts of problems at the chicane in the Formula Ford race. Are the touring cars going to get through? Well, the leaders are well through. It's Crosby in 2nd place. It's Richards leading. And the traffic jam at the chicane is clearing it. No problems. Richards leads. Crosby 2nd. One of the Nissans is up into 3rd place. There is John Harvey in about 6th position. And what do you think so far, Alan? Great stuff.
One thing you got to stay off is the curbs on the opening laps. The tires are still cold, and the curbs will slide you right into the gravel. Jim got a great start. Crosby's holding 2nd. Here comes the Nissan Turbo into 3rd spot, and Peter Brock's in 4th with Alan Grice right behind him.
And don't they go? Look at, there's Crosby. And there's another one of the BMWs. But just look at the lead that Jim Richards has got as he approaches the long straight, the Brabham straight, 5th gear. That'll be about 140 miles an hour as they get towards the end of it, and down to racetrack hairpin at the end of the first of these 32 laps here in this event. And it's almost door handle to door handle behind. Look at it, look at this, great stuff. But the leader, Richards, is well away, and I'm looking now as he goes round the long left-hander. There he goes. And up into 2nd position, the Nissan. Crosby is down to 4th place. And there is Dick Johnson's Ford, which looks to me as though it's in about 6th position as Richards comes through almost at the end of the first lap, down into 1st gear, or in the BMW. The Holdens will probably be in 2nd. Accelerate away. Now, Richards completes lap 1. And he goes across the line. I'll give you the gap between himself and the 2nd place man. It's George Fury in 2nd place. It's Alan Grice in 3rd position. And in fourth place behind Grice, it's Peter Brock. Started fourth on the grid, and he's in fourth on the race, but Fury's got ahead of him. Alan.
I'm very surprised at the lead Jim's got. Good on him for doing it. He got a fantastic start, and there we have a spin in one of the score gully. Come on, Murray.
Yeah, it's Brad Jones's Starion that's gone off. Brad Jones, that we were expecting great things from, he's overcooked it. Now, Jim Richards had a lead of just over 2 seconds on the first lap. He's holding it. I must say I'm surprised. He's giving away a lot of horsepower, but he's got a very nimble car.
A very well balanced car, and he knows exactly how to use it, Murray. But I'm really surprised that on the long Brabham Straight, the Holdens haven't been able to whittle that gap down. We still have the Nissan in the second spot holding back the field a little bit, but I wouldn't say at any stage that that car is holding up the field. We've got Grice now in third spot. He's opened up a spot, and still the Holden Brigade is yet to put any dent on that BMW.
Race order, lap 2. Jim Richards leads in the BMW. George Fury is second in the Nissan. In third position is Alan Grice in the Holden, probably the most powerful car in the whole race. In fourth position, Peter Brock. In fifth position, it's Graham Crosby. And in sixth place is Dick Johnson in the Ford Mustang. So there's a good spread of makes. The BMW out in front. You can see the gap there. And in terms of time, it is 1.74 seconds. George Fury is just starting to close up. We're going to leave you for a little while, but be back soon. Lap 4, and is action with a capital A, because the lead changes as you join us, and George Fury, the man who won the first round of the championship at Calder, has taken the lead from Jim Richards. So the Nissan Skyline Turbo is pulling away, and now Richards is losing second place to Alan Grice. So it's a Nissan leading, it's a Holden second, a BMW in third position, and I think, Alan, that's not altogether surprising, because the two cars in front have just got the power.
In the lead there in the little Skyline, and George certainly knows how to make use of it. Alan Grice has brought the V8 into place, and I still think it's a magnificent job that Jim Richards has done over these opening laps, and it's only natural with a 6-cylinder engine. He's going to fade away slowly and steadily as the big engines gather up speed on the main straight.
George Fury there leading, and Alan Grice is going for it now, but Fury, the man who was second in the Australian Touring Car Championship this year, the man who has got so much rally experience and is a real flyer in these touring cars. He's using the power, and there is the lead changing, with Fury going through in the Nissan, Jim Richards going back to second position, then Alan Grice followed Fury through, and you can see now that it's a battle between these two. And 42-year-old Alan Grice in the 5-litre V8 Holden, the man who won, of course, the Hardy 1000 this year, really on top of his form, is giving us a tremendous display of sheer aggression.
He's really pushing that car, Murray, and I hope he knows he's got a good set of tires under it. We've got a tire war going on here. It'll be Japanese Dunlops on the Skyline, Japanese Yokohamas on the Holden, and Bridgestones on the third place car. Well, there goes the Rover from Western Australia, Mr. Slako, having a tough time. You can't afford to hit these curbs, Murray. If you do, they bounce the cars around very savagely.
And look at this, though. Alan Grice with that, about 430 horsepower under his right foot, is really pushing George Fury's Nissan now. Grice is showing George his car in the mirror all the time, so Fury has got to drive very, very coolly now. He's got to make sure that he's not hassled, he's not worried by Alan Grice, because if he puts a wheel wrong, Alan is going to be through and in the lead. And there's quite a gap developing now. In third position, it's Jim Richards who led the race. In fourth place, it's Peter Brock, who started from fourth on the grid. But John Harvey, in another one of the Holdens, is up in fifth place, and that's an excellent performance, because Harvey started ninth on the grid. He is up into fifth place. In sixth position, it's the man who started second on the grid, Graham Crosby. And now Fury and Grice have got the problem that we've seen so often, Alan, catching up and getting past the tail ender. Is the lead going to change here?
Traffic is really going to be dicey here, and George will be just praying that this car in front of him will open up and turn to the left when they get on a straight and not balk him on one of the tight corners. Alan Grice is really pushing that Holden. He's bouncing off those curbs the way he learned to do so well in Europe, and realizes that he wants to not lose touch with car 30. If he misses George in the slipstream, he's not going to be able to get out there in the front. He wants that blockage of air that he's getting at the moment.
Right, well, now let's look at this lapping. We expect George Fury, who won 5 rounds of the Australian Championship this year, right up tight, he's going through, and if he can get through before the end of the straight and Alan Grice doesn't, that's going to mean that Alan is at a substantial disadvantage. And there's a wave of the hand there as both Fury and Grice go through.
Peter McLeod was very gentlemanly there, Murray. He waved over, he realized he was being lapped, and he gave the lead cars a go. That's what we like to see in competitive racing. Tremendous sportsmanship.
And we're now on lap 6 out of 32, and as you can see, it's still Grice leading. It's still Fury leading. Grice in 2nd place. Still in 3rd position is Peter Brock. Still in 4th position is Jim Richards. So Jim Richards is slowly sliding down through the field, driving as he may. The nimbleness and the good handling of the BMW 635 CSI is not making up for its comparative lack of power. In 5th position, still John Harvey. In 6th position, Graham Crosby. And Fury. Now, is there likely to be any problem with the tyres, Alan Moffat?
Yes, there will be, Murray. I can't see Alan Grice maintaining this pace. He's got the heaviest car in the field, or one of the heaviest cars in the field, and you just can't keep hammering at that pace and hope to get away with it. He's bouncing the corners, he's knocking the heck out of his suspension. He just doesn't want Fury to get away from him.
Well, now we have a sensation, because into the pits has come Jim Richards, who started from pole position, who led the race, was in 4th position, and it looks like his race is run. Frank Gardner's entry, Jim Richards, and Frank's still got 2 other BMWs left in the race, is out of it. Retirement for Jim Richards. So we will now have a new 4th place man. Up into 4th place will come John Harvey, 48-year-old John Harvey, who's done virtually everything in the motor racing world. There's Frank Gardner with his back to us and his famous white beanie hat on, looking gloomily at the engine compartment of the BMW, and that's the end of the race for his car. It's not the end of the race for George Fury, though, or for Alan Grice. They're scything their way through the tail enders now. Fury goes through, Grice goes through, offline goes the Capri, and the black flag has just been given to Ray Ellis in the Holden Commodore. I don't know what his transgression is. Let's not bother about this, because look, Grice and Fury are virtually tied together.
He's winding that Holden up like you haven't seen one wound up. He knows this is a sprint race. He's not worrying about 1,000 kilometers at Bathurst here. But I think George is doing a fantastic job. He's got pressure from the Bathurst winner. He's got a lot of heat on him, yet he's maintaining a cool line. You don't see the Nissan being bounced around as savagely as the Holden is. But believe me, if Gricey gets in the lead here, it's going to be a tough job for Fury to regain it.
As we watch them, Alan, tell me what modifications and alterations are permissible.
The main modification, Murray, is of course engine balancing and blueprinting, as it's called. That is totally refining all the parts that go into the engine. The connecting rods, the crankshaft, are exactly as you buy on your normal Holden that you buy at any dealer around Australia. In the case of the turbocharged engines, they're allowed certain refinements to upgrade their turbocharger and of course push more air into the engine, and that's one reason why you see a little car like the Skyline being capable of leading a big powerful car like the Holden.
Lap 8, and what a furious pace. Neither of these men are exactly spring chickens, although they're not old, because Alan Grice is 42 years old, George Fury is 41 years old, and we're going to see a change for the lead, and Grice is going to take it. He has used the power, the superior power of the Holden, and he has got through with a bit of demon. That's one of the last late breakers exercises, and now Alan Grice, who won the Hardy 1000, European Touring Championship contender in 1986. He's been over in Europe, like you, Alan, getting a lot of experience of a different kind of racing.
And he certainly got it, and to his credit, he used it. He learned how to bounce off those curves. He learned how to prepare his car and give him the durability that is necessary, mandatory, if you like, to give you that kind of reliability. John Harvey with a spin or an off. But
so, John Harvey off, the race continues. Grice leads, Fury second. Join us again soon. Lap 10, just about 1/3 race distance, and you are looking at George Fury, who is not second, he is in the lead because Alan Grice has blown it, and here's how it happened. Look at him. Now watch Alan Grice as he comes up to the corner, changes down, loses the back altogether, spins out. George Fury goes through into the lead. Alan Grice keeps the motor running. Peter Brock goes through into second place, where he is now. Alan Grice is down to third, and there's a big gap now between George Fury, the leader, and Peter Brock in second place. Do you think Peter Perfect can get to the front, Alan?
he's got a tough job. That's a big gap between that Skyline and that Mobile Holden. But nevertheless, we see a classic example of over-exuberance there in the case of Alan Grice losing it. He got tight under brakes. I think he probably got overconfident with the passing maneuver that he had on Fury earlier, a lap or so earlier, and the rear locked up on him. It started to wiggle, which is an indication that his tires may have been letting him down. Once it started to wiggle, he lost the feel for the car and he had to let it go.
Well, there is 41-year-old Peter Brock, the principal of the Holden dealer team, which has been thrilling us all in Europe, and has been champion of Australia in the Touring Car Championship, of course, not once but several times, and winner at the Hardy 1000 no less than 8 times. An incredible performance. Well, he's got a battle on his hands now, because try as he may, and he is trying very hard indeed, there's a big gap between him and race leader George Fury. In third position, it's Alan Grice. In fourth position, and this is tremendous stuff, up into fourth place has come last year's winner, Dick Johnson, in the green Ford Mustang. In fifth position, who has been displaced by Johnson, is Graham Crosby, and in sixth place is Larry Perkins, the only man to have driven across Australia in a sun-powered car, would you believe? And we are now on lap 11. There is Brock, who is second. And Johnson is out, as I tell you. But Johnson is in fourth place. He is out of the race, and that means to say that in fourth place now, it's Kiwi Graham Crosby in the Holden.
No apparent damage to the Mustang. He's getting out of the car, Murray, but one of those things you can't tell what's happened, but he's definitely not running, and that isn't going to win a race for him.
So it is still George Fury leading, but what happened to previous race leader Jim Richards? Here is the answer.
Thank you, Murray. A great start, Jim, but what happened?
Well, we got away well, but it developed quite a bad vibration in the driveline after one lap. So I sort of slowed a little bit to see if it would sort of continue on, but it got worse, and we think it's a CV joint or something that's starting to go.
Well, bad luck here in Adelaide. All the best when you get to New Zealand.
Thank you.
Back to you, Murray.
Jim Richards led, then George Fury, there he is, led, then Alan Grice led, only to spin and go out. Back into the lead goes number 30, George Fury. Behind him in second position, Peter Brock in the Holden. So it's a Nissan leading, it's a Holden second, and there is the third place man, number 3, Alan Grice, fighting back and well ahead of Graham Crosby in fourth position. There's Peter Brock going through in second place, so it's Holden second and third, and there is the Nissan leader.
Yes, and I think George has got the race under control at this stage, Murray, but I do see a fight developing between Alan Grice and Peter Brock, and Peter's not one for wanting to let Gricey through in a hurry. When those two Holdens get a little bit closer, I think we're going to have a real scrap for second and third. But George is controlling his car beautifully. He's running it just as nicely as he can. He knows he's got a reasonable cushion. He's got the power to stay in front, and now he'll be trying to conserve those tires, get through the real estate as fast as possible, but not being as hard on the car as we've seen some of the other drivers.
Alan, in Grand Prix racing, we're used to seeing turbos blow and clouds of smoke. That does not happen, question mark, here with the turbos in the touring car class?
No, they seem to have that very well under control. I must say that the Nissan company spent a fortune in development costs with an earlier model, and they used that results to great benefit. The Skyline has been very successful over the last season, Murray.
And it's not doing too badly here today either. There's the second place man in the non-turbo, very much so, V8 Holden, which he has, with his colleagues, developed to an absolute knife-edge sharpness. Peter Brock, second place, but it looks to me as though he's going to stay there because George Fury is driving a very cool, calculated race. He has gone through to start his 13th lap, and Peter Brock has yet to. Now the gap between Grice and Fury and Brock is 11 seconds as Grice goes through, and there's only about 6 seconds now between Peter Brock in second place and the man that you're looking at, Alan Grice. And thundering along behind there is Graham Crosby, who is in 4th position, and then behind him has come Glenn Seaton in 5th place, and right behind Glenn Seaton, Larry Perkins seems to have got back into the running again.
Yes, well, here we see Peter in second spot. He's got 420 horsepower under the bonnet of that mobile Holden, as does Alan Grice. The tires play a critical role at this stage. They just have to conserve their tires. I see Peter sliding the car a lot. He's getting maximum traction through those corners, but he is eating up rubber in the process.
So it's still Fury leading, Brock second, Grice third. Come back soon. This is lap 15, which is just a whisker short of half distance in this 32-lap race. And looking sinister as ever in the dark shades, number 30 there, George Fury, has a commanding lead in the Nissan. Still in second place, Peter Brock. Still in third position, Alan Grice, who lost the lead with that spin out earlier on. Graham Crosby is in 4th place, ahead of Glenn Seaton, 5th, and the second of the Nissan Skylines, and there's the first of them. And in 6th position, Larry Perkins. Now, Alan, I know that you have feelings that the weight to power regulations in the Touring Car Championship here are not quite as equitable as they might be.
Well, one of the beauties of watching the Grand Prix circus, Murray, is that they're all exactly the same. In other words, the fellow that's at the front, he's there because he did a good job, and the bloke at the back is there because he did a bad job. We've got a variety of rules applying to a variety of cars, and the main thing is the weight of the car to the size of the engine. George Fury out in front doing a great job for his team. With a small engine, allows him the capacity to have a light weight. The 5-liter Holden in the Mobile Commodores mandate that he has 1,325 kilos to carry around. The weight on the Holden is a real anchor around the driver's neck.
Well, the Holden's a pretty heavy car. It's also a pretty noisy car, but we've just nearly been blown out of our socks here in the commentary position, and everybody else here at Adelaide, because we've had one of the American C-151 Starlifter military, oh, there it is, military transport planes go over us. That can carry as much men and equipment as two and a half Hercules transporters. That's just by the way. Here is the real interest at Adelaide, and it is, can Peter Brock, with the famous 05 number, do anything about 3-0 in front of him? Number 30, George Fury. Well, George Fury's just gone past number 32, which is Gary Wilmington, in his 5.3-litre XJS Jaguar, as though he was standing still, and Peter Brock is about to do the same thing. Number 99 there is Dennis Hawley in the 3-litre Ford Capri V6, ex-rally driver, and now Peter Brock is past the Jaguar. He's making his way through the field, but George Fury is still very much in command.
And it's great to see the Nissan Skyline team out in front, Murray. They had a miserable Bathurst race. They were very competitive all season, and they struck tire troubles at Bathurst. They weren't able to unfold the promise they showed. Scott was on pole, did a fantastic lap in qualifying, took the Skyline onto the front row, but they weren't able to have a very happy Bathurst. And here they are at the end of the season, running in the lead position with their Peter Jackson car. Great for them.
Well, there is the leader, George Fury, in the Nissan Skyline Turbo. Alan, we talk a lot in Formula One racing about expenditure. What's your educated guess about what a top touring car team would have to spend over a season to keep in the front?
Well, we're not scratching for money in the league that you're accustomed to seeing all season, Murray. We certainly don't hit the $1 million mark, but a team like we're looking at the moment, the Peter Jackson Skyline team, would have to be looking at very close between $800,000 and $1 million to do the job they're doing here.
Well, I guess that'll do it till the real thing comes along. And the gap now between George Fury and Peter Brock is 9.7 seconds. I remind you that John Harvey, who was doing well and who did well last year, has long since disappeared from the top runners, although he is back after having gone off. And he is currently in 7th position. We are on lap 17. We are over half distance. And really for George Fury in the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline that we're looking at now, doing a bit of rear wheel hopping there because he's really motoring around the corners. It is a question of keeping it on the island, being regular in getting round the circuit and keeping up the lap times, or keeping down the lap times, because he's got a very, very comfortable cushion. Look down the straight and you just saw Peter Brock coming into sight, nearly 10 seconds behind.
Rhythm becomes all important here, Murray. Almost a reflex action. George will just be doing everything he knows how to do best, almost automatically. What he'll really be concentrating on is saving those rear tires. He won't be having any worries with his front. When he turns the wheel, it'll go where he wants, but he just has to nurse those rear tires. He doesn't want the 05 Commodore sneaking up on him and doing what Grice did to him in the early laps. But he is holding the pressure nicely, and even though he does have a nice cushion at the moment, he knows it's Peter Brock behind him, and that's not a very welcome sight in anybody's rearview mirror.
Well, there is the principle of the 4th largest car manufacturing organization in Australia, would you believe? Peter Brock with his very, very special Holdens. 3 times Australian champion, 8 times winner of the Hardy 1000, the man who's won at Le Mans, Group C in Britain, raced in Europe, safety promoter. What a marvellous record he's got. So Brock is on his way. Fury is ahead of him. Behind Brock in 3rd place is number 3, Alan Grice. We have to leave you, but come back and join us as quickly as you can. Live at Adelaide for this enthralling touring car race, and number 30 George Fury, there he is in the Nissan Skyline Turbo, still leads commandingly, but behind him a battle developing between Brock and Grice. I nearly said Grock and Bryce, which sounds like some sort of vaudeville act, but anyway, it's terrific stuff down on the circuit there. They're about 10 seconds behind, and Alan Grice has been gaining on Peter Brock. There is Brock, 05 in the Holden. Now look for Grice's car, which seems to have dropped. There he is in the background, and the gap in time between Brock in 2nd place and Bryce in 3rd position is 2.6 seconds. Now Bryce was leading, spun off, has really fought back, and looks as though he could at least get 2nd place, Alan Waffle.
Well, there's one thing that Alan Grice likes to do, and that's be in front of Peter Brock. He's got a lot of energy pumped up there. I think what he may have done after that spin at the end of the main straight, Murray, is crank up his onboard brake balance. He's taken a little bit of brake off the rears, and he seems to be happier with the car at the moment. Tires don't seem to be bothering him, and now we have 2 equal cars and 2 fine champion drivers having a go at each other here.
Are you suggesting, Alan, and you can tell me confidentially because there's only a few million people listening, that there may be just a tiny bit of needle between Grice and Brock?
Yes, there is. Naturally, when you have 2 champions grinding each other down in absolutely the same product, the one is always crying about the other and vice versa. Grice has done it to his credit with very limited funds, and I think in that respect he's got to have a clap on the back. Peter is very well heeled in terms of sponsorship and does a great job with that money, but it's still a tough job to get up there and knock off a factory team. Gricey's done it. he's done it at Bathurst. Let's see whether he can do it here today.
We have been full of admiration in Europe watching the European Touring Car Championship this year for Alan Grice, who came over new to it, has buckled down, has got to know the system, the people, the rules, the regulations, what can be done and what can't be done. And we just hope he's coming back next year, because it has been absolutely marvellous to see the Australian Holdens battling with the European BMWs, the Rovers and the rest of them in the European Series. But what a battle we have now, as number 13, Bob Holden in the Toyota Sprinter, is about to be engulfed by the very, very powerful Holdens. First of all, Peter Brock, who sizzles past in second place. There behind him, on his boot lid almost, is Alan Grice. Grice is visibly closing up on Peter Brock now, but catching is one thing, getting past is another.
I mentioned these two cars are equal in performance, but where they're not equal is in tire development. The Yokohama tire on Grice's car is definitely gobbling up Peter, who is on Bridgestone tires. There's a real war going on between these two companies. Bridgestone haven't come to the fore yet, and one of the advantages that Alan Grice has definitely got at the moment is his tires is giving his car much greater control.
Lap 21, great pace. George Fury leads. Look at the battle for second. Now taking one of the Mercedes cars, probably Denny Hulme, ex-world champion in Formula One, who is over from New Zealand, 50 years old, plus Denny Hulme, who's come back into touring car racing this year with great distinction, winning the TT at Silverstone touring car race. And now Grice has got his front bumper, as I would call it, practically sawing in half the Holden of Peter Brock in front of him. And Peter knows, because he can see him in the mirror, because I can almost feel Alan Grice's eyes boring into the back of the neck of Peter Brock.
Well, there's going to be a real fight here, and Peter Brock is certainly not going to move over and say, after you made, I'll be second. Thanks very much. He's going to do everything he can. It's going to be a question of grip on those rear tires. We saw Gricey with a little bit of a slide again under brakes at the end of the main straight. He's sliding his car for everything he can do. That's heating up the tires, Murray, and the next time he goes for it again, it might not have the grip he wants.
Well, Alan, you're not a chap to hang back. If you were Alan Grice in this situation and you were looking into the eyes of Peter Brock in his rear view mirror, what would you be doing?
I would be trying very, very hard to pass just exactly
and
the way
he's done it. Alan Grice goes through. What a maneuver, and Brock retakes him, and Grice mounts the curve. He just overdid it there.
He overcooked it, and he paid the price. He'll have to wind himself all up again to get back onto Peter's bumper part. He didn't quite have the line. He thought Brocky was going to back off. He didn't, and off he went, and now he's got another 3-4 car laps that he has to catch up. A little bit of a tactical move there, but Brocky didn't fall for it, and as soon as Grice went into the gravel, he lost his momentum, and he has to wind that car up again.
Yeah, of course, you've got to be very, very good to hassle Peter Brock. He's been in it such a long, long time. Over in Europe, this is the one name above all others we know in Australian touring car racing. Present company accepted, Alan.
Thank you very much, Murray. We're partners at the moment. You can come anytime, mate.
Right. So Peter Brock goes through. Alan Grice is in third place. The battle is rejoining, and you're going to rejoin us before long. Lap 24, and as George Fury wends his lonely, victorious way around this Adelaide circuit, there he is. The battle for second place has been resolved now in favour of Alan Grice, who has got ahead of Peter Brock, and here is how it happened. Now you see Brock in the 05 Holden. Grice comes out from behind his boot lid, goes through, takes the lead. And Alan Moffat, what's your comment on that?
Well, there you have engine preparation, Murray. Les Small, Grice's chief mechanic, obviously has squeezed a few more ponies out of that little Holden engine, and Grice literally drove by Peter on the straight there. That was quite phenomenal.
So
the motor goes.
Now look at this. Look at this. There's a blown motor there, and there is George Fury coming towards us, and the blown motor was that of Peter Brock, because he's overdone it. Peter Perfect is out, and there is the sign. Great clouds of smoke. I talked about turbos exploding, Alan. That hasn't even got one.
No, but when they go in a big way, and we now have Gracie right up on the tail of George Fury. I think George may have been working his tires a little bit too hard. Peter getting out of the car.
And what a super ding-dong race this is, because George Fury, who looked so much in command of things, is about to be taken by Alan Grice. The lead is going to change, or is it? Fury won't have any of that. He's perfectly entitled to adopt the racing line he wants to adopt, even if it happens to be in the way of Alan Grice. And Grice is now up alongside, dropped back a bit. Fury has got the foot, and he nearly loses it. Grice nearly went off the circuit earlier on, and Alan Grice goes through into the lead of the South Pacific Touring Car Championship round 2 here at Adelaide today on lap 25. And what an absolutely sensational drive from Alan. He had the lead earlier on, only to spin off, dropped down to 3rd position, and has now grimly fought his way, first of all up to and then past Peter Brock, and then closed the gap to George Fury, and now takes and looks as though he's going to increase the lead.
I wouldn't have thought that was possible earlier on, Murray. I thought George had a stranglehold on this race, but Gracie has driven as aggressively as anybody's ever seen him in Australia. This is the last race of the season. He's got a brand new car. This is his 1987 car, and boy, whatever he and Les Small have been doing to this thing over the last couple of weeks, it is really paying dividends here today.
Look at that replay as Alan Grice sails through. Now, you would not like Alan Moffat to accuse George Fury of having lost concentration, would you?
No, not at all, Murray. I think he was earlier about between lap 20 and 28, or as we've been going through these last few laps. George was driving very, very fast. I think he suspected that he needed to go faster. He could smell these Holdens behind him, and he really was hammering that little Nissan. I think to the detriment of his rear tires, and he's virtually had to let Gracie come up on his bumper bar and let him go. There doesn't seem to be any resistance at all after that pass that Grice made on the Nissan.
Well, the Australian GT champion of 1978, 1979 and 1984, Alan Grice, in the flying 430 horsepower V8 Holden, is in the lead and increasing it. There's George Fury bouncing through the chicane in 2nd place. Well, I say again, as I've said many times before, Grice has got maybe a tiny problem now as he comes up to 2 tail enders, because if they hold him up the way George Fury is fighting, and he's certainly aptly named, it would give George the opportunity to close the gap between himself and the new race leader, Alan Grice. We are on lap 26. It's a 32-lap race, so there's 6 laps to go at the end of this one. And if reliability is the name of the game, and ability is what Alan Grice has got, as the blue flag is shown, it looks as though he is very much in command.
He definitely is, Murray, and if there was ever a testament to staying with one tire company throughout the year and persevering when things aren't too good, here's an indication of it today. Gracie signed a contract with Yokohama early in the year. They did a lot of development in Europe. They were looking at Bathurst towards the end of the year as being the day when they might strike gold. They did that, and here he is again with his new car and new tire combination, giving it absolute blistering pace here in the South Pacific final.
Indeed he is. Lap 26, Alan Grice leads. George Fury is in 2nd place. In 3rd position is Graham Crosby. In 4th place is Larry Perkins, who's come back into the race. In 5th position, it's John Harvey, who's done so similarly. And in 6th position, it is Glenn Seaton. Join us again soon. Back live at Adelaide, the orange car in the background is that of the Flying Kiwi, although that's a bit of a contradiction in terms of Graham Crosby, ex-world champion motorcyclist.
Yeah, unfortunately, this
Else in the motorcycle world that matters. He is in 3rd position, but with Alan Grice still place, with in 4th place Larry Perkins. The thing of real interest at the present moment is that Graham Bailey, in this year's Bathurst winning car, there he is in the very distinctively coloured car, is climbing up. He's right on the boot lid now of Glenn Seaton, who's in 6th position. Glenn Seaton in the second of the Nissan Skylines, and George Fury is in the other one in second place. Here's the real battle as they close up on Gary Wilmington's XJS 5.3 litre Jaguar to lap it. And is Glenn Seaton in the Nissan Skyline, he's only 21 years old, about to lose that 6th place to Graham Bailey?
Well, I think he's in the same position George is. They were doing fine in the opening laps when their tires were giving them the performance they wanted, Murray, but now towards the closing stages, we're on lap 28, only 3 to go. I do believe the tires on the Nissans have let go on them, and here's Bailey climbing all over young Glenn, trying to get by, and no doubt will here on this straight.
And Bailey, of course, is Alan Grice's partner at Bathurst and in the European Championship races this year. Chickadee it has on the front of his car, because that's the business that Graham is in as a chicken processor. And he's been racing since the early 1960s, ex-Toyota Celica driver, and amongst other things has produced 5 children into this world. And he's really going here right on the boot lid of Glenn Seaton's Nissan Skyline, going for 6th place with still Alan Grice, his teammate, in the lead. Lovely bit of driving. Just watch the way he hangs on. Where would you be pulling out to try and get through, Alan Moffat?
Just whenever I saw a clear space in front, Murray, and I had enough power under my foot to do it. Glenn isn't going to pull over and let him go by, but Graham would dearly like to pass Glenn here. He had not a very long run in the car at Bathurst. He is underrated by many and all standards. He just doesn't get the practice in the long distance races that the lead drivers get, but he's showing a lot of pluck here at the moment and getting in there and giving Glenn Seaton a real run for his money.
Yeah, number 15, Glenn Seaton, there he is, of course, won with George Fury in the Nissan Skyline the first round of this South Pacific Championship at Calder last weekend. So those two cars are in great shape. Now Gary Wilmington, this is interesting me, is still keeping ahead of the Nissan Skyline and Graham Bailey in the Holden. Do you find that at all significant, Alan?
I can't comment on that one, mate. We haven't seen enough of the car on camera to decide exactly how competitive he is going.
Well, he's keeping ahead anyway, and we are now on lap 29 in this 32-lap race, with things certainly looking good for Alan Grice in the lead. George Fury is still second. On his own in 3rd position, it's still Graham Crosby. So it's a Holden leading, a Holden in 3rd place, sandwiching the Nissan Skyline. In 4th position, it's another Holden of Larry Perkins. In 5th position, it's yet another Holden, John Harvey. And in 6th position, you're looking at Glenn Seaton's Nissan Skyline. But is he going to be able to hold off the Holden of number 2, Graham Bailey? If he can't, it's going to be almost a Holden whitewash in this race. And they've both got past Wilmington's Jaguar, as you can see. Now, this is Graham Bailey's opportunity. He's harrying Glenn Seaton every inch of the way.
He has to get a real slingshot, Murray. These cars are so equitable in their power to weight ratios that you don't get a chance where you just absolutely pull out and pass somebody. There's not such a great power advantage. The turbo is keeping the number 15 car in a pretty competitive situation, and Graham Bailey, I think, is going to have to really be right on the bumper bar of the little Skyline going on to Bradman Straight in order to take advantage of the slipstreaming and then pull out like we saw Alan Grice do so successfully earlier in the race.
Yes, maybe, Alan, substantiation of the point you were making earlier on, because the Nissan in the lead, as I understand it, has got about 315 horsepower, and the Holden behind it has got about 420 horsepower, but can't do anything about the lesser powered car.
Well, for the racehorse people that are familiar with Melbourne Cup handicap weights, Murray, they'd appreciate that the Holden is carrying 1,325 kilos, and that's a lot of weight against the lighter Skyline. We're on the last lap.
So, well, there is Alan Grice on his 31st lap now. Last lap but one. So between Grice and victory, there is a pretty short distance of about 7.6 Ks, and he certainly deserves the victory.
That was a very, very gutsy drive. He obviously wanted it. I personally didn't think that anyone was going to peg back George Furry with the lead he had, but nevertheless, Gricey did. He had to do it the hard way, got by Peter Brock, and then nailed George Furry for the lead, and is sitting now in a very comfortable position.
And has actually overcome the problem that Graham Bailey has not been able to overcome. The Nissan Skyline in front of him. He's caught him and passed him, notwithstanding the fact that he's in the big heavy Holden.
Well, he did that with a little bit more verve, I think, Murray. You can't compare the two drivers, and Gricey took to the curbs. He went left, he went right. He was right on George Furry's bumper bar, and he still had to do that to get by. I don't think Graham Bailey's quite got the experience to be prepared to attack things at that matter.
Very fair comment. Well, Grice has certainly got it, and here he comes. Not very far now before the start of his last victorious lap, and not that he will. He could actually feather it a bit, take it a bit easy, let the gap between himself and number 30 George Furry, who is in second place, reduce a bit in order to be sure of getting home in that first place with no reliability problems. There's the gap.
Well, Alan Grice has done a great job here today, and he'll be absolutely thrilled to go out on a winning note again, twice in a row, the last two races of the season. Fabulous effort for him and his team.
Alan Grice starts his 32nd and last lap, and as he goes into the chicane, George Furry crosses the line in what sounded to me to be a slightly sick Nissan. I don't know if my ears are... if I'm not hearing things right, but it just sounded a bit rough to me, Alan.
Well, I think you're right, Murray. They certainly wouldn't be because they weren't trying. They were pushing it to the limit, and perhaps that turbo knob got turned up just a little bit too far, took the edge off one or two cylinders, and George is hurting a bit at the moment.
There's Alan, 6 seconds now in the Bob Jane T-Marks Holden between himself and George Furry. And the Yokohamas, as Alan Moffat has pointed out, seem to have done the trick very well and truly. Thanks, of course, to the fact who's pedaling, the chap who's pedaling them.
And we know they're readily available at all T-Marts, don't we, Murray?
I didn't say that, Alan.
It's great to see Bob Jane supporting everybody, and he's done that extremely magnificently and generously over the last 2 months.
Oh, look at that. There's coolness for you. He sees the camera and gives us a friendly little wave. Alan Grice on his victory lap, knowing that he's virtually home and dry. George Furry thundering down. Thank you. Hello, Alan. Everything all right? It obviously is. Well, that is confidence with a capital C for you. He's spotting every camera all the way round. And George... Great stuff. I've never seen anything quite like this. There's a chap called Martin Shanker in Rallycross who does this sort of thing, who gets out of the car and drives it by putting his foot in through the door on his parade lap. But I've never seen anybody waving quite so cheerily on his last lap before he's even finished the race, and here he is doing so. Glenn Dix goes out, the checkered flag is waved, and Alan Grice wins this vital race at Adelaide from George Furry, who takes the second place in the Nissan Skyline. There he is, and Graham Crosby finishes in third place. That's how close it was after... oh, poor old Glenn, he's lost his cap. After what, to me, Alan Moffat, was a truly great race, and if they're all like that, I envy you what you're seeing in Australia.
No, it's great touring car racing here, and congratulations to Les Small, who put the engine together in that car. It was engine power that powered him past Peter Brock on the straight, and congratulations to the Yokohama technicians who have got tires on that car that are well and truly magnificent and able to do the job, Murray.
There they are, all three of them together. Alan Grice, number 3 in the Holden, the winner. George Furry alongside him, number 30 in the Nissan Skyline, and just behind both of them, Graham Crosby, number 6. There are the official results on your caption. Larry Perkins 4th in another Holden, John Harvey 5th in another Holden, and in 6th place, Graham Seaton in the Nissan Skyline. So 2 Nissans and 4 Holdens in the first 6 places, and there is the winner. And now, what do you think, Mike Gibson, of that touring car race here at Adelaide today in these perfect weather conditions?
Well, what I do think, Murray, is that Jackie Stewart's affinity with the royal family there, he must have thought for a minute that one of... And now, with a wave of our hand, we go down to the pits, and the man himself, Alan Grice.
Well, Al, that's certainly a well-deserved win. You're making a habit of coming back from overseas, this time Spain, and winning in your home ground.
Yes, I certainly enjoy it too, Ken.
And this time, you were looking around for sponsorship before the race, and it was only finalised at the last minute, wasn't it?
Yes, right at the last minute, Bob James stepped in and helped us, and the old Yokohama is still there. And I think probably, if you look at the race today, aside from having such a strong car, which everybody now in Australia knows I've got, the tyres, obviously, I think the other blokes had trouble with tyres, and we didn't. But it is a great thrill to win in front of such a crowd. This is the biggest crowd probably you could win in Australia. Certainly the crowds are big in Europe, but this is fine.
You love the accolade of the crowd, waving to the crowd. Feel good?
Oh, yeah, sure. It makes up for making a mistake. I always try to, I think I said it before, I always try to run with as much rear brake as possible, and I just overdid it again and locked the rears up. So as soon as I adjusted that and got the rear brake off, it was a fine car again.
Congratulations, Al.
Thanks, Ken.
Good to have you back with us. And where are you off to now?
Japan's the next one.
See you then.
Monday week, and we're over there for a race, then back, and probably the New Zealand races. We're not sure about that.
Okay, Al. Back to the boys in the commentary box.
I was telling Jackie Stewart he shared a taste in hats with Alan Grice. Ian Maurice, it's about time, I suppose, that you and I start wearing hats.
Mike, all I ask is that you bring me a hat back from Adelaide. I can't get there, it's the next best thing. Well, they ought to give Greg Norman a hat.